Hello friends, welcome to episode 85 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I am Sarah.
And I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
I'm feeling the stress of, like, the holiday hitting, but it's not the stress of the holiday that's getting me. It's all of the people compressing work prior to it.
Oh, yeah.
It is so obvious this year that everybody's
doing the pre-vacation rush.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think it's also, oh my god, it's the end of the year, because again, time was irrelevant up to this point, and now time is relevant because, 2020 is coming to an end.
There were no gods and no masters before.
Yeah, so I'll take a phrase from your codex with Sean. It's like a powder keg balanced on a knife's edge.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Nope, nobody knows. Nobody knows what that means for real. So, so yeah, there's that definitely feel in the air, and then of course it's snowing here in Michigan, not a lot, but just enough that everybody doesn't know what they're doing again.
Yeah, just it's same story every year. Everybody forgets what snowflakes are, and traffic gets all screwed up for about a week. And
accidents and craziness. So we try to manage. We try to manage.
We got some D&D coming up.
We do.
Your
game first.
We played Sean's game last weekend.
Yeah, how did that go?
It went pretty well. We bopped around a little bit. There was a lot of like role play between characters and between NPCs and stuff like that. So that was pretty nice. We hit level 4, so I got to see how overpowered paladins quickly become. And
nice.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah. So your next game coming up is going to be mine on the 27th, and then I think yours is just after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Did we decide on the 3rd? Is it what?
No, I think it is before. Actually,
okay, we'll have to double check.
It's just before. You know what? Time's irrelevant.
One way or another, though, we got some D&D stacked up.
Yeah, we got some stacked up. We also have our 30th show, the 30th of this month. We've got our show that we are doing. I am going to plug that again, that we are doing our listener appreciation, and everybody is welcome to the live stream chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that will be turned on beforehand for everybody, and we welcome you and any new listeners who want to jump on that. We will be doing giveaways that day, and so we hope to have you to answer some questions, to go over the year, to kind of wrap some stuff that we may have not gotten in the other shows at the same time, and kind of just have a nice wrap up to the year.
Yeah, we have some really, really nice gifts to give away.
We're hoping that we get
to those who join us in the live chat. So if you're listening to this recorded, if you are able to make it Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, the December 30th.
Yep.
The live chat will be open to everybody. Please join us on the Discord. You can find that link tweeted out pretty much every week.
Yep.
And join us there. And like I said, we have some really nice gifts to give away, and we'll be giving those out randomly to people in the live chat during the show.
Yes. But we have a show this week.
We do. So as we've mentioned before on the show, one of the perks of being a top-tier Patreon is that you gain contributor status. You get to basically make suggestions for shows that you want us to do, and we do them.
Yep.
So a while ago, one of our contributors, Knox in the Box, made the suggestion that we talk about live-action role-playing.
Yes.
Not something he was terribly familiar with, and just kind of wanted our rundown on it. So that is what we're doing this week.
Which is, we both have done it.
Yeah, we've both got
multiple
some
occasions
experience
over the years. Funny enough, we didn't meet there, but many of our circles of friends did.
It's like all the friends who introduced us were LARP friends, but we were not LARP friends.
Correct. I think I saw you on one of the fields once or twice, and that was it.
Yeah.
And actually, I was a DM for the game that you did play.
Yep.
One of the games you did play, I should say, because you 2 or 3, if you include, I guess 3 different systems.
Yeah, 3 different systems. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been a long time since I've LARPed. I will say that.
Yeah. There's a part of me that kind of itches to go back, but there's also another part of me that realizes I'm 41.
Yeah.
And that's not going to go so well.
Yeah, running around in dark woods and falling down on knees and things just does not seem like a good idea.
Like, you lost me at running. Like, everything after that was just a bridge too far. Like, I creak when I get out of bed, so I'm not,
And yet, I know people who are 10-plus years my senior who are still in the SCA, still fighting, still doing amazing combat.
Still in shape, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Form. Shape and form. I think that's the key. I mean, I'll address it later, but there was one man who it was more than role-playing for him, and not in the negative sense.
Yeah.
I think I met today's Don Quixote.
Oh.
It was beautiful.
Okay.
It was absolutely beautiful. So, let's get into this a little bit. Let's start in the past.
All right, so let's start off like we usually do with these sort of broad topics. What is LARP?
As far as I am concerned, LARP is merely the live adaptation of taking the personification of a character with others in a environment. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a story or a setting environment, because it could be modern day. And it is make-believe. It is children's make-believe with some rules. Not always hard rules, but rules. The things that kept you from beating the shit out of one of your friends when they were just like, I'm a superhero. And you're like, you can't be a superhero. That just ruined the whole game, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I have laser beam eyes. No, nobody here has laser beam eyes. Why are you doing this?
Right.
You know, the Mary Sue's. It cuts that back. At least, and I would say that at the lightest form.
Yeah. I mean, I think live action role play takes a lot of different forms. You know, from your typical fantasy LARP, I think everybody's seen that video on the internet of, you know, lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, it looks unflattering, but at the same time, though, that is kind of
the truth of it.
The truth of it. Like it's a very authentic clip, I think.
Yeah.
But you know, I think out of context though is the problem. Is that you don't you're not one of the players. You're not into it and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I think you know we'll talk about the immersion level later. But
very much so. I think that makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference when you're a spectator, or when you're a player.
And I think to the same degree, you could say the same thing about like football. Like if you're watching Pee Wee football. And you're watching a handheld, cell phone video of it, it's going to look ridiculous to you what's going on out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you don't even know that they're playing American football. They're actually playing rugby, but you think it's American football, and suddenly everything doesn't make sense at all to you,
right? Because
the rules don't apply. And then if you watch something like pure English football, and it's Kerry versus Dublin, and you're like, this is incredible. Because you're seeing them at the top of their game playing in a rule set that is clear and easy to watch, even though you aren't being told the rules, because you're seeing professionals. You're seeing seasoned individuals do it.
I'll give you a slightly different metaphor for that for that LARP clip.
Okay.
It's the difference between being a sports fan and sitting on the couch and like jumping up out of your seat and screaming at the TV when the big play happens, and not knowing what the hell is going on and watching other people scream at the TV that the one guy passed the ball to the other guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's worth screaming about.
Yeah. And I think that is like, I mean, but you could say that with like watching Critical Role.
Yeah.
Some people are like, what are you watching?
You literally sat for 4 hours and watched people play Dungeons and Dragons. Well, yeah, of course I did.
Yeah, exactly.
And other people will just be like, that's the biggest waste of 4 hours I've ever...
Well, I mean, not to go so far off subject here, but we just found out that in a game that we both like to play, which is Ark.
Yeah.
That Vin Diesel plays Ark.
Vin Diesel's not only a huge D&D nerd, but a huge Ark player, too.
Which is fantastic at the same time. But now suddenly you've got a bunch of people who are like, oh, Ark, that stupid creative game, like, why the heck is that getting a second version? Oh my god, Vin Diesel plays it? I wonder how much it is today. Come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
So anyway, not to get too far off topic.
Hey, this is our show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
So you've got your fantasy LARPs. Arguably, the SCA is a LARP.
100%.
That's a Society for Creative Anachronisms. And they're more of a historical group, but they are enacting the roles of people from the time periods they are enthusiastic about the history of.
Very much so.
And so they play a role, and there is like little in time period societies that they put together.
And there are rules.
And there's actually like live combat.
Very much so.
That especially a lot of their medieval folks will do.
Yeah, but the whole determination, like there isn't a classic storyteller involved in the process, but there are officials who keep safety and other things in concern, in check. And marshals to a degree who kind of help guide things, but most of it is run, and most of the I will say the overarching plot, although it's not so much a plot, is just player-to-player interaction. Within the rule set, someone goes and challenges the kingship, and based upon winning a tourney, becomes the king of that realm. And then they run events and do things. And it is that progression, this kind of noble hierarchy that sits within the system that keeps it going. And it's something to be kind of admired and respected, how long and how broad it is. But even it, like anything else, is subject to all kinds of issues that any normal game has.
Sure, absolutely. So. It's definitely a level of dedication too far for me, but from a distance, I do admire it a little bit. You know?
Yeah, and then you have the Renaissance Festival participatrons, people who dress up and go there to play a role while walking around, and I think that is the lightest form of it.
It's definitely the lightest form of it, because it's not really technically a game, as much as it is just role playing.
Well, it's role play and it's make believe.
Sure. I think we're focusing a lot more on like tabletop games and such like that. So I mean, being that there's no rules for being a participatron, but you are going and playing a role in an environment amongst others in a live action, live action sense. So it's a very light version of it, but it gets the idea across.
Yeah, I mean, we're still using our imagination. We're still coming up with characters. We're still presenting those characters, whether it's in a light or a grand form.
Speaking as that character, interacting as that character. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I think where we cross the line there is when you get into something like murder mysteries, like those kind of things where you go to like a dinner theater where you may not be involved, you may be witnessing it. So it kind of is... It's theater. It's not so much role play unless you're directly involved.
Yeah.
And I think there are some that cross that line a little bit. And then you have like escape rooms where you're directly involved with a set, but it's more of a party game.
Yeah, you're just you trying to interact with an
environment. So I
it's
think
not
that's
really role play. But
yeah, I think that's different. I mean, you could argue that haunted houses are kind of role play to a degree. But it's because it's make believe.
I'm gonna have to see the math on that.
Right,
one.
But again, I think we're talking at the far end of the spectrum the other way.
Yeah.
But I think what we'll talk about mostly today is your traditional storytelling environments and some light versions of that, and how it all fits together.
Yep.
So.
All right, so we talked a little bit about what LARP is and what are the different incarnations it takes. And keeping in mind too that the LARP genre, I suppose, kind of spans across all different storytelling styles. So you've got anything from like I've seen post-apocalyptic LARPs that actually use like airsoft and paintball guns.
Yeah, or some actually use Nerf.
Some use Nerf and stuff like that. But you have like actual on-screen projectile weapons. I have seen Vampire the Masquerade LARPs. One of the ones that I played in fact. It was also all World of Darkness, so there was werewolves, changelings. There was no mage yet.
Mage is hard.
And there was one or two wraiths, I think. But but it kind of had that whole World of Darkness genre to it. And
I've definitely done World of Darkness in both a setting where it was a constant static location, as well as done it at conventions. So I get the feel behind that, where the rules are quite hard.
Yeah,
I mean, they're set in stone. They're a classic LARP, but it's very different.
But it's an instance of one that does not incorporate boffer weapons or anything like that. Like there's no contact in World of Darkness LARPs.
No.
And so I think that's in a way.
Although I laugh because it's World of Darkness, and the first thing most people think of is World of Darkness LARP. You mean goths getting dressed up and hanging out,
smoking clove cigarettes, and
I assure you, contact is involved at times in that.
Yeah,
and it's like, did you play a Tremere or Toreador? Because that changes the whole gameplay right there. So, but yeah, no combat, as we're saying, in a physical sense.
Sure, and the main reason I mention this is because I think LARP being a full contact sport is kind of those two things are kind of synonymous with one another.
Very much
in
so.
A lot of ways. When you hear LARP, you imagine people running around in armor with padded weapons and stuff like that, and it's not always that way. There are LARP environments that are completely contactless, at least by the rules, anyways. And so we'll discuss the pros and cons of it being a contact sport in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, like I said, some of them even incorporate firearms. But keeping in mind that any LARP that incorporates contact, be it with paintball or airsoft, firearms, or with boffer weapons and stuff like that, typically have like safety marshals or fighting marshals.
Yes.
That will patrol and basically be almost like a lifeguard functions at the pool.
Very much so.
They basically just kind of walk around and watch the combat unfold and make sure that it's unfolding in a safe manner.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can call out rulings or even just stop everything if somebody gets hurt or if a rule gets broken and needs to be adjudicated right away.
Yep. I mean, effectively, it's very much like X-carding at a table where everything just pauses. And everybody agrees and carries that pause so that we all have an understanding that, hey, we're pausing everything right now to make sure everyone's okay.
The LARP you and I both played in had you call hold.
And that was it.
Everybody had to repeat that too. So you would hear that echo across the field. You hold, 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 hold.
Yep.
And everyone would just take a knee. It doesn't matter if you're anywhere near where the original hold was called.
Yep.
Everyone takes a knee.
Yep.
And everything stops until it gets, you hear hold off.
Yep.
So.
And that way, everybody's at a common ground, and it's a safe word, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. It's actually a really great way of describing it as a safe word. Yeah. So everything stops. Everybody makes sure everybody's okay. Character gets dropped instantly.
Yep.
And there have been a couple times where we've had medical issues happen.
Oh yeah.
Someone took a face shot and then fainted.
Yep.
One time.
I had my glasses literally separated from my face, like split in the middle and sent in separate directions.
I had to drive someone to the hospital one time.
Yeah.
Because they tried to vault something and
didn't succeed.
Make it.
Didn't succeed. Yeah.
And yeah, there was an injury that involved.
Yeah. I mean, it does happen. I mean, I know in the SCA where you're dealing with full plate mail and shields and much more sturdy weapons than normally you would think.
Oh yeah.
Injuries can happen all the time. A lot of times they won't even recognize that it's happened.
Oh yeah.
Because somebody drops back and it's not that big of a deal, but a safety person can easily see that and go, whoa, that's not normal. Let's get this person immediate care, and they have paramedics on site ready to go.
Oh God, I'm thinking of Viggo Mortensen in Lord of the Rings when he kicked the orc helmet and broke his toe.
Yeah, and screamed.
And he was just so in character, he just kept right on with the scene.
He rolled with it. Yeah. I remembered a friend of ours who was involved in an SCA combat, and she took a pole arm to the face. Now, she was wearing a helmet with a full mask on it.
It rung her bell, though, I bet.
It completely rung her bell and actually blackened, I think, both of her eyes.
Oh, my goodness.
Because it slammed the mask into her face.
Oh, my goodness.
And that kind of stuff happens. It's a very... I'm not going to say violent, because, not everyone there is in it for the aggressive tendencies, but they're in it for the combat tacticals of it and the group kind of foray. But there are some people who are in it just to get out that energy.
And here's the thing too, is that having played in 2 fantasy LARPs, not just the one, I got a little dose of perspective. And you may have remembered that playing in the LARP that we both played in.
Yes.
We kind of had a reputation. Do you remember what the words for that reputation were?
Rhino hiding?
No, I was going to say rednecks with baseball bats.
Oh, God, that one. Yes.
Yeah. So in the greater Michigan LARP community, our particular LARP was known to be rednecks with baseball bats.
Yes.
And
swing hard with some very, very light padding.
There were some people who were used to SCA calibration.
Well, they definitely were in both.
Just came in and decided they just swing for the fences.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always everyone's cup of tea.
No.
Whenever I played an NPC and played a monster, I would always gear up in my chainmail that I made myself.
No, that's pretty cool.
And I'm going to be smug about it for 3 seconds here.
Why not?
Just simply because whether my character was supposed to be wearing armor or not, just simply because if I was to become a target, which all monsters inevitably do, someone was going to hit me.
Yeah,
and I wanted some extra padding on that, But then I played in another LARP actually that was introduced to me through Sean, and I found out why we had that reputation in the other LARP is for rednecks and baseball bats. Because their calibration was so much lighter.
Yeah.
Like, they really, like, when I went in there and, like, used honest-to-goodness combat stance and tactics with my polearm, they were amazed.
They didn't
were
know.
What are you even doing? Like, you're a master-tier fighter here. And I'm like, this is the second time in my life I've used a polearm. So I don't know if I'm a master-tier fighter, but the fact that I've got, a good stance and a good grip on it, and I've got a good lunge with it, and I can get some distance, like, that just really threw them off because they weren't used to that level of fighting.
Yeah.
Theirs are basically like, did you make contact? Did you say a number? Then yeah, that's fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny for me the first time that I went out to a different LARP after playing for years, the one that we'd played at, and I'd started very young. And I remember stepping out there and just doing basic combat and realizing that they had no idea what they're doing. And some of these players had been there for months, if not years, and they just never really advanced because it wasn't as important. And I think that was the key difference there. They were more about the game and less about the combat. And I was looking at it, I was prepared for the combat, and that really didn't happen much. And I thought that was interesting. It was an interesting difference. And you find that system to system.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you get to World of Darkness and combat becomes very theoretical and logical.
Yeah.
You got to think your way through a situation versus brute your way through a situation.
Exactly. When you're in a contactless system, combat just becomes narration.
Yeah.
At that point, with some rules adjudications.
I mean, it's still tactical. There's still your people who are going to crunch the numbers in their heads of like, what are the odds that I'm going to be able to achieve this against that person, and will I be able to then take the next thing that I need to be able to do and push it on? In a political sense, less of a physical motivational sense of being able to do it. But it's in the end, it's similar. Whereas in a physical combat game, how many times I can hit you is really the win.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what numbers you're swinging, but if you never make contact with me, it doesn't matter how big badass you think you are.
Yep.
And that really changed the game a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Knox is in the live chat with us. He's, as I said earlier, the one who introduced this topic.
Yeah.
So he's asking, you have to shout numbers?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So unlike in tabletop D&D, you're going to roll dice, and that's going to say how much damage your longsword does. Well, you've got typically in most LARP settings, you're going to have a number that is calculated off of like whatever skills your character has, and what the base weapon damage is, and such like that, for how much damage that weapon does every time you make contact with your opponent. And so because they really have no way of knowing how much damage they're supposed to be taking, because there's no dice or anything like that, and they don't know what skills you have.
Right.
You say the number. So every time I reach out and hit Rob with a boffer sword, I say 3, 3, 3, 3 every strike.
Yeah.
And if I use something big, I might call like a 3, 3, 3 death strike.
Right.
Or, something like that.
Yeah, if I sneak up on you, I might use a backstab or an assassinate.
And then it kind of becomes a mental challenge of, I know how many hit points I have. He said 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. That's 15. Sounds about right. And then that's how many hit points I have, so I drop.
Right.
There's a lot of honor system.
There's a lot of trust.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust in LARP, and we'll elaborate that a little bit later. I think we've got a little more. We dig a little deeper into that point, but yeah, that's basically how LARP combat happens.
Most of it. Most of it.
Yeah.
There are some systems that are lighter than that, where they literally just do you hit in the arm, you lose your arm. I have armor on, so I can take 2 shots to the arm. Or I can take 2 shots to the leg. Or I have a chest piece, so that means I can take 2 shots or 3 shots to the chest.
Right.
And no one's allowed to get hit in the head in this game because, there are no helmets or whatever allowed. And those kinds of systems are just as valid as anything else. There are some games where every sword always does the same amount of damage. Every, axe does the same amount of damage. So it's very easy that no one calls numbers because you know what everything is doing.
Yep.
And that simplifies the system greatly.
Yeah. Knox says, I have no ideas what the rules are. Well, We don't really either, honestly. Every LARP kind of has its own rule system.
Yep, exactly.
So we can tell you basically kind of how it happens in LARP society in general terms, but we couldn't tell you...
That's the difference between Palladium and D&D and anything else.
Yeah.
In Palladium, you're going to be doing, 1d4 SDC. Whereas in D&D, you might be doing, a D8 plus your strength.
Yeah.
Like, every rule system is a little different. You've got to get into the game to be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some games are rules lighter. And if it's not a system that if you're not someone to be doing math on the fly, like I was not, but I still made it work, sometimes those systems just don't work out. So.
Yeah.
So traditional LARPs, when you're doing things, you've got your combat LARPs, like we were talking about in our case, Canar or Nero or
Carps.
Mm-hmm. And what is it? It's
Dagger here.
Dagger here. I can never say it right because I always just call it Dag, which has been around since the 70s, I think, right?
Yeah.
1977.
1977. It's one of the earliest LARPs, yeah.
Yeah, and it's still huge. It's I would say in the U.S. specifically, it's still a good-sized LARP, and I'm not going to say as strong as the SCA in numbers, just because the SCA has a much wider breadth when it goes into its crafting and lore and such, because it's much more historical. But I would say it definitely sits at about that same level, with just because I've talked to multiple people in multiple states, and they've heard of DAG, or they have a friend who plays DAG and has gone to Ragnarok, which is their big thing, where people come in from other states to play. I mean, it's impressive, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, but then you get into like the SCA, where literally when they get together at Penzic, which is their big convention, if you will.
Oh yeah.
The U.S. government gets the numbers from it and then uses it to train spotters to do counts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they'll fly over it because of the tents and everything, and those people will then give numbers back and say, okay, how close was I? And they know the counts for the day, and it's to help them figure out, like, oh, we need to know how many people are in this, refugee camp. We're going to fly something over. We need an estimation based upon that. That's what they're training for. And they use that. They get their own post number. They get a zip code.
That's amazing.
For Penzic, because there's that many people there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They have a postmaster general as well.
Geez.
It's incredible. It really is.
That's crazy. I had no idea about any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an impressively large community that is surprisingly well organized.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, for a game. I mean, that's effectively what it is.
Yeah.
Although if you tell them that they're playing a game, there's a lot of them, it's not a game, it's a historical society.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, dude.
Yeah. Your name is Society for Creative Anachronisms. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's just lean into that a little bit. But then you've got stuff like Vampire, which is kind of run much like the world of Vampire in a lot of ways. It's little fiefdoms with storytellers and their own little pieces, and people tend to come and go in them as they feel.
Yeah, and very socially based. I mean, there's definitely some combat and stuff like that. That takes place in its own way, because, like I said, it's a contactless thing. But you will find that a Vampire LARP, a lot of times you're trying to talk your way, or manipulate your way, or con your way through your problems, rather than just outright trying to kill everything that's different from you. The thing that I really liked about World of Darkness, and I know this is a maybe a sticking point for some people, but I tended to like it, is that conflicts are resolved in World of Darkness LARPs with rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
And it's... Now, in one sense, you're like, I am an almighty vampire. I am a minion of the night. I am a drinker of blood. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. I win.
Yes.
And I get that seems a little hokey to some people, in the same way that lightning bolt seems a little hokey to some people, but... I mean, you gotta have conflict resolution some way, and it's better than keeping a pocket full of dice.
Yeah.
And a rolling surface with you at all times.
Exactly.
And it's quick.
Yeah.
It's remarkably quick, but it's also at the same time remarkably complex, because there's a trait bidding aspect to things where, if I'm much more powerful than you, I can outbid you in traits, and essentially just, it doesn't matter how many rock, paper, scissors you win against me. I'm just stronger than you.
Right.
or just faster, or just smarter, whatever.
Yeah.
You've then also, and I think I've mentioned this before in other podcasts, it introduces the bomb as a fourth thing you can throw, and that's a fist with your thumb up to represent the wick.
Mm-hmm.
And the bomb destroys rock and paper, but you can snip there's
a way to survive it. Yeah.
So it's a gamble.
Yeah.
It beats 2 out of 3, but if you declare you're throwing the bomb, or you can throw the bomb, which you have to do to be able to use it.
Yep.
It may bait them into throwing scissors, so you may just say, I can throw the bomb, and then you throw rock instead to smash their scissors. There's mind games involved.
Yeah, I mean, just as much as any other combat, there's still a little bit of tacticalness to it, which makes it fun.
There's a little tactic, but a little mind game, and I think the mind game is very in-fitting with the setting of World of Darkness.
Yep.
You know, because manipulating your opponent is pretty much bread and butter there.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, like, you've got various hand symbols, I remember, that use...
Yeah, over your head is
like, out of character.
Yep, you've got the fist up to the side, which was, I think, one of the, like, I'm in shadows.
No, that's your arms crossed across you, like you're laying in repose.
Yeah, was I'm in shadows.
Like, touching the opposite shoulder with your hand.
Yeah. But I remember there was, like, you had the Umbra... You had shadows, you had all these different ways that you could be obfuscated.
Oh, yeah.
And that people could see those different obfuscations based upon what they had the abilities to see. Mm-hmm. So it altered things. So you could be in a room and no one would know you were there. They would have to ignore you.
Right. So, you know, there was cool representations of supernatural, you know, happenings that you could still do in a live-action roleplay. And
another thing that was different about Vampire was it was often played in common spaces with other people. Like, I played at a cafe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was a pretty seriously large cafe, but let's leave it at that.
I don't know if it's still there or not, but I played at Fortress Games and Comics in East Lansing when I was up at Michigan State.
And then I played at conventions where it's not just one necessarily set area, it's still kind of a common area. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is that, the vampire world is mixed with the common world.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of manage that. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't break the veil. And that was a whole
the masquerade.
The masquerade itself. Yeah, I keep calling it the veil because that's where it's gone to. But the masquerade itself. If you violate the masquerade, the prince will come down upon you.
Oh yeah.
You know. So it's interesting where LARPs go. I mean, whereas like with the SCA, it is always its own setting where it's at. They set up tents. They make it a theater of history. Mm-hmm. You know, in full costumes that are representative of the time period, as accurate as possible, even hand-stitched or hand-crochet and hand-knit. You know, their armor is as accurate as possible, made by armor smiths and having to be maintained by such. Mm-hmm. You've got high-level crafters who get accolades and become laurels, which means they are a master in what they do at some level. And they may get additional accolades given to them by heraldry on top of that to denote deeds that they had done or accomplishments that they've had. So much like a sorority or a fraternity, it has meaning outside of the SCA. Like, I can put down that I'm a laurel in the SCA, you know, in, not me personally, I'm not going to take that total, but I could as an individual, you know, put that down and say, you know, I'm a laurel in scripture, you know, and apprenticed under this individual. And if I go to a certain job, somebody may look at that and say, oh, you dedicated a lot of time and you have accolades. I'd like to see your accolades. Yeah. And they can contact your masters and get the information. And that's because it shows dedication.
They have like online registries for all this stuff too.
Very much so. Very much so. And like another thing,
you can look a person up.
You can go place to place. I could, you know, if I was in the SCA and I had to travel to Europe, there's plenty of people there in the SCA who I could connect with. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that was beautiful. I often talked to friends who were in the Pittsburgh area about friends who were in the Toronto area, and they knew them. They knew of them. They knew of their knights, and so, oh yeah, I fought him in his tourney. I think I did see that person as Squire. And then when they would meet up in game, quote unquote, in SCA, they would talk about me as an individual in that world. Like, oh, you're familiar with Lord Avy? Yes. We're good friends. We've met in Midgard. Where they're from. And they will use the terms of the areas because everything's patterned out. Like, technically, I'm in a specific realm right now. And there's barons who are here and look over it. And that's how you connect with people. And I think that in itself has a beauty to be able to say, where do I want to get involved in the SCA. Who do I know local? I can literally look it up, find the exact baron who's in the area, and know what nights they get together. Or I can go somewhere. Like, I used to go dancing in Ann Arbor for their dance nights, just for fun. And it was neat because I would learn classic dancing.
Yeah.
And I did dinners with a couple friends where we would cook for people, and it was fun. We made huge meals.
I would love to, like, if I ever did get involved in the SCA, I would love to do the culinary stuff. Like, just digging up, 400-year-old recipes, 500-year-old recipes, and just making them with, authentic ingredients and authentic cookware. I think that'd be great.
Knox brings up an interesting thing. I'm just kind of a jump here. Is like a LARP obstacle courses, like Dragon Lair style, and all I can think of some of those Japanese shows.
Oh yeah, Takeshi's Castle.
Yeah, Takeshi's Castle. Yeah, like those kind of things. Like, technically, they're putting on costumes and doing crazy things. I mean, it's a game show, but that's funny to think about it that way.
All right, no, real talk though.
Okay.
Okay, if you're doing a LARP obstacle course.
Sure.
Okay, so first thing I'm thinking is, okay, cool idea.
Yeah.
However, inherent safety concerns.
Oh God, yeah.
Because we're talking about possible liability if anybody gets hurt on any of those obstacles. Second off, there is a cost component in putting together an obstacle course together. So where are we getting the funds from? Is this something we can get from the game, or is this something that we are going to fund ourselves?
Blow your mind. You ready? You ever heard of Tough Mudder?
I've heard of it.
That's effectively what you're talking about without character sheets.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's Tough Mudder. People pay to go get muddy and dirty and go through an obstacle course that is dangerous and they have to sign off on.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I mean, that's it. That's it right there.
That's fair. That's fair.
People literally get themselves ready for years to go to some of these crazy events.
But anyways, it illustrates the point that there's a lot that goes into this sort of thing. It's not just a bunch of people going, oh, that's great, we're just going to dress up and hit each other. There are, like, a lot of organization and underpinnings of hierarchy and red tape and bureaucracy that keep these things going, because it's not just as simple as 4 people and a game master sitting at a table. And I think that actually kind of leads us into our pros and cons.
Oh yeah, pretty
nicely, because some of the things I'm describing are already written down in our cons section, so we'll get there very quickly. So, what does LARP do well? Why would you want to go to a LARP?
I think what it is it is a top level of escapism, in that I can go and play myself. I can go remove myself from society for a little while and be my character and be with other people. And we're not getting the distractions of the pizza or the bills or the, door, being, something new coming through our door or our phone ringing or whatever. It's a detachment. In the case of the SCA, it's a full detachment. I'm doing something totally different. I'm crafting. I'm doing whatever. So it gives us that accessibility in a community that also wants to do that with you. It's in that investment.
I think that's 2 great points right there. I mean, you've got 30 people who all want to play the same game. You have a small society there. All working for the same goal. And honestly, that's really cool that you can almost build a living, breathing society out of a group of people who all buy into the same make believe. It's one thing when you're in a tabletop game. For contrast, where your storyteller has to do voices for everybody, and your party is just 4 people, and those are like the only 4 people you ever really interact with,
and you feel like in 4 hours you didn't get anything done. I
can
straight up tell you at a LARP in 4 hours you're not going to get much done either, but it's very different. It's very different.
There's a thing we call LARP time.
Yes.
But the other thing though is the immersion. And I think that's the big one for me. Is that if you think that putting on some music and having cool painted miniatures and some nice terrain is going to really immerse you in the game, that isn't scratching the surface of what you get at a LARP.
Yeah.
When you are, and this kind of brings me back to that YouTube clip.
Yeah.
Of the, lightning bolt. Yeah, when you take it out of context and you look at it as just a 30-second clip on YouTube, it looks ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, when you are standing there after spending literally hours in character, standing there in a full costume with a albeit padded sword on your hip and a shield on your arm, and the sun is setting and you hear a war horn, and you just know that the orcs are coming, and as you've lit the tiki torches along the trail, so you have some light, and you hear the footsteps coming, and you're like, you get tense because you know that like you've got that like almost Helm's Deep moment of it begins, where you know that you're on the eve of battle and you've got your battle brothers and your battle sisters next to you, and you're gonna have a fight, and that like, man, when they show up and they're just a bunch of 20-somethings wearing sashes that say orc on them, also holding duct tape and foam padding weapons, but there's a thing in your head that says, no, those are orcs.
Yeah.
There's a level of immersion you reach where suddenly your suspension of disbelief jumps that gap.
Yeah.
And it's real enough. It's real enough to evoke the emotion it's looking for.
Yeah. Or you're sitting there, you're having a nice quiet night, and you're talking to someone across the fire from you, and they look beyond you, and their eyes get big. And you're like, there's something behind me. And as you turn to look in the darkness, green eyes blink back at you. And then there's another set, and another set, and you slowly turn and realize you're surrounded by blinking green eyes. That is a terrifying feeling.
I bet.
And those kind of moments pull you right out of where you're at. Just as much as a heavy battle at SCI. I've watched some of the battles that happen at Pennsic, which are huge. They're huge siege battles. They're unreal by most people's standards. Giant groups of shield walls slamming into each other while pole arms are jabbing above them and arrows are being shot at range to try and just get a little bit of an edge on people. And you see someone go down, and you watch as people like quickly step to cover over them and make sure that gap is filled, and that they're not going to be able to break through that section. Well, another group is literally spinning and flanking, and you see the terror in these people's eyes, and as they're like, we're going to get crushed through, and it happens, and it's intense, and it's tactical, and it's amazing to watch. But it's that suspension of disbelief that is then encapsulated by all of the efforts that everyone brings to the table, not just the storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Sean threw in the general links and images a link for me. There's a YouTube channel called Tasting History.
Okay.
That does exactly what I was talking about with the SCA thing.
There you go.
Going through all those old, ancient recipes and making them authentically.
Yes.
All right, so what else? I think one of the other big pulls for LARP for me was that it pulled on so much of a different skill set for me. Was that things like, are you into costuming? Are you into leatherworking, making fun props? Are you a blacksmith? Like one of our mutual friends. Actually is a pretty decent leather worker. Indeed. And has all his own tools and dyes and stuff like that, and has made some really remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
All for LARP.
Yeah.
I
mean, he made me some impressive armor.
Yeah.
Years ago, and it's still great today.
I remember him being in a blue and black set of armar. He made that himself?
Blue and silver and black, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made that one as well. I actually remember when in-game he got what he needed to make it. It was quite impressive.
Yeah.
But
that's not something you're going to do for a tabletop game,
No, not traditionally. I mean, I've seen a couple of tabletop games where you've got people who are crafty and can do that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But again,
But I'm not learning to make chainmail for tabletop. But I'll tell you what, I learned how to make chainmail for LARP.
Yep.
And I made my own vest, and I made a couple of them. got a little bit better with each one. 'Cause the first one was really.
So my concerns now start coming into that a little bit.
All right.
And I'm going to open with one of the concerns, and that is, just like any other society, LARPing can be very gatekeeping as well.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I know people who got upset when people would make aluminum chainmail versus traditional, not steel, but galvanized,
galvanized
chainmails.
steel,
And I just remember those days were like, what did you make that out of? Like ring links? Like you just connected a whole bunch of key rings to make that? And you're like, dude, he freaking made chainmail somehow. It doesn't really matter how he made it. Yeah, but that's not the way you're supposed to make it. I'm like, okay, you're gatekeeping how to make your fake armor.
Right, your sword is made out of PVC pipe, foam padding, and duct tape.
No.
And yet you're complaining that his chainmail that he made is aluminum and not steel.
My sword's actually made out of rattan, which is way better than your sword, and is going to last so much longer.
My bad.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the things, and it gradually gauges up from that.
Yep.
I've known many stories with people in the SCA who basically left it because the gatekeeping was too much for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, it's sad in any society, but the more people involved, the more it gets like that.
Yep. You also, because a lot of these LARPs are not a curated guest list, your tabletop game, you get to say who's invited. A LARP, you don't generally. They're pretty open to the public. If you're willing to pay the entry fee, you are able to show up.
Yeah.
And so you can end up with some real trash individuals there.
Yeah, and it's hard to weed that trash out. The bigger the group and the least amount of marshals and the least rules that are there for the social aspects.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we're just here to hit each other with sticks and move on. And it's like, great, and that guy's a total knob. Like, I'm not having fun. Well, go play with somebody else.
Right.
You know, it's a big game. Go somewhere else. You know, I think that's another piece to that is some of those people can get very lost in their physicalness. For instance, you know, overexerting themselves or not gauging their targets at all, which is often a common thing to happen with, you know, as you get into the moment. But some people just don't care and like, oh, you're going to cry, I'm going to bully.
You know, times, yep. Physical games also are unfortunately and fortunately based off of your own physical preparedness. So as such, it can be, first off, inaccessible to people with disabilities.
Yes.
If you're not able to run around and hit people with sticks, well then, you know, unfortunately that's a big part of the game.
Yeah. It can be. It definitely can be.
But also, you know, and this is kind of one of those arguments we hear like about social situations and stuff like that in our tabletop games, is that it is basically based off of your physical prowess. If you're a good sword fighter in real life, you're a good sword fighter in LARP.
Traditionally,
and vice versa. If you're not a good sword fighter, you're not going to be able to represent a good sword fighter. You know, it's not as imaginary as tabletop is.
Likewise, in some of the social aspects, you know, if I'm playing vampire, if I'm not a social person, yet I'm playing a socialite character, it shows. Like, I'm not going to be nearly as eloquent or able to work with people, and that's going to reduce the number of people who are willing to play with me.
Because there's no standing there and going, you know what I'm saying, make a persuasion check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
You don't have a persuasion check. You have the words coming out of your mouth.
Right. And I think that weighs very heavily on those social games as well, especially people who are interested in getting into them now feel crippled by not being able to be very social. I think that both of those then lead into the other big thing is expense.
Yeah.
If you go to either of those types of things unprepared physically, like I'm not able to bring the right game to it. I'm not able to bring my right sword or clothing or armor, or I come to an event undressed properly. Like I'm dressed down and yet my character is supposed to be this other standing. It really makes a huge impact on the setting and people's acceptance of you in that setting. And again, that's gatekeeping for the individuals who are like that. There are some games that look at it as, oh, you tried as hard as you can. That looks fantastic. Let's roll with this. Yeah. And that's the difference. Is it just comes down to, did you find the right game and the right people? Yeah,
and I think some, they're not all created equal.
Yeah.
You're gonna find good groups. You're gonna find bad groups. God, I know one of the biggest expenses for me was actually time.
Mm-hmm.
It was an hour and a half drive out to from where I lived at the time when I was playing that LARP.
Yeah.
And then when I switched over to the LARP that Sean introduced me to, that was at least an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, just getting to the places was challenging for me as well. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, you wanna take some questions?
Well, I think I want to talk about the last thing that really makes it challenging.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Trust.
Yes.
And I think within that trust of just like, especially in games where there's a lot of contact, that trust that we build around our little table now expands to a much larger group, and that becomes challenging.
Oh, it
you
really
can't
does.
trust each other, and losing that trust because you lost the distance between you and your character becomes a really big issue.
Yeah.
Is that people are like, well, that was just in game. And if I've already got a social problem where I can't necessarily, not going to say problem, let me rephrase that. If I already have a deficiency in and be able to read social reactions, that's amplified by the fact that now I can't tell whether you're in or out of character.
Yep.
And some people take that in and out of character, they're in character way too far, and that really makes it challenging for people. So it can make it very difficult for people to identify those social constructs and build trust again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So the only other thing I was going to talk about was the power curve, but I think that's per system.
It's per system. Yeah, but it's a living. Most LARPs are living games.
Yes.
And so you have to have some sort of character advancement, very much like experience points and such like that. And so sometimes when you're jumping into a game that has not kept a cap on its power curve, you're jumping in as a newbie into an environment built around people who've been playing it for 17 years. And while they are calling 100 damage per swing, you call 4.
Yeah.
And the monsters that they are throwing out there need to be a challenge for them.
Yep.
So they are big enough that they have 700, 800, 900, 4,000 hit points.
Yep.
And you're 4, you're not going to hit them 1,000 times.
No.
You're just not. So
yeah.
it's something to take into account. Now, questions, yes?
Yes, let's get into these.
All
We've got
right.
a decent amount of them.
The Mad Elf poses probably the best question we had this week.
Yes.
Why? Why did we do that? I don't know, Mad Elf. I don't know.
I think one of the main reasons why I started it was because of my cousin.
Yeah.
I got into gaming because I got into LARPing and gaming totally, really from my cousin because his friends started it. The game that we actually played was started by my cousin and his friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I went to events with him, and then it grew from there for me, and I thought it was really great, and I wanted to keep giving into it. And in that sense, it was fun. It was a lot of fun for that. It was me connecting with my family, and then me finding new family, and I don't regret it.
Yeah.
There are moments that I regret from it, but for the most part, I definitely don't regret the people that I met and the times that I have, because I have amazing friends because of it.
Yeah. Absolute hard same on the. I met some really amazing people who are still my friends. That's awesome. I'm an immersion junkie.
Yeah.
And so I definitely got into it. I was already dressing up to go to the Renaissance Festival and such like that, and kind of gathering my own costuming. And then when I found out that there was a place where I could do that and play D&D, hey, I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So Overwatch asks, is there a dream LARP either of you wished existed? Is there a nightmare LARP you wish never was?
I think for me, I would, and I've seen some of these starting to come together, and that was the high quality, like Disney World like LARP, where it's set and it's good. There's one out in Utah that's trying to do that right now. Evermore. And it's amazing to think that that's a thing that's happening within our world. I mean, we definitely have the talent out there. It can happen. As for a nightmare LARP, I went to Gen Con a few years back, and it didn't surprise me that every single hotel had a 24/7 LARP going of something.
Mm-hmm.
It surprised me that there was some that were so disjointed from reality that it clearly was something. It was beyond escapism. You had lost the LARP aspect.
Yeah.
And it was just pure escapism, and it didn't feel right to me. Because once you
almost
remove...
hedonistic to a fault, almost.
I think that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like, it gave me pause and concern.
Yeah, gotcha.
That not only are you showing the fact that you have this level of disjoint from reality, but you're also going to now exploit it and drag in more society to this hedonistic, loss.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say that happens in pretty much anywhere, but that's uncomfortable for me, that it pushes into that level of pollution.
Sure. I think my fantasy LARP, I may have some half-written rules for my own LARP that I was telling you about earlier.
Yeah.
They're half-written though, because I don't know if I have the heart to finish them or the drive to. But I would say it would be a fantasy LARP with just really smooth rules. The biggest thing I've always had in LARPs is that the rules are always felt too clunky and almost like people who wrote them couldn't let go of the tabletop systems they were based on. And I think your rules need to be written for LARP. And I think if you do that and you keep your power curve in check, you can write some real cool. You can have some real cool role play.
What's your nightmare?
Honestly, it's more of a situation than a LARP. I don't know that I would classify any LARP as a nightmare, but any situation where people can't tell fantasy from reality, in game from out of game. That's what got me out of my last LARP.
Yeah.
That's what stopped me from going to LARP altogether, was that I had real bad taste in my mouth when I took issue with somebody's in-game actions, and they then more or less slandered me out of game for it.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with all that fallout, so...
Yep. Loss of self too far.
Hell is other people.
Yes.
So Knox in the Box asks, are there DM refs in LARP? How many? I clearly know nothing about any of this. How does combat work? We kind of covered that.
Yep.
Do you have to announce item usage?
You do.
Yes, you do. Do you have to keep track of anything? Or how do you keep track of anything? You typically, some have used tags.
Spell packets themselves.
Yeah, hence the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
They are saying that because... that is what they're casting, and they are expending that resource.
They might have to check a spell list in at the beginning of the day and mark those off, or validate. I know sometimes with certain games there's life tokens that you have so many of. So yeah, there's all kinds of minutia rules based upon the system that you're playing.
Yep, and as far as DMs and refs go, there are like combat marshals, there are rules marshals, there's typically a storyteller who dictates what goes on in the actual story. There's quite a bit of hierarchy that takes place there, at least in a well-organized LARP.
Yeah. Draven asks, what is your favorite portrayal of LARPing in movies and TV? Is the most accurate depiction that we've seen? Honestly, it's really hard to see a good depiction, in my personal opinion.
Yeah,
everything is so tropey that they take it to a comical level
Yeah.
or to a sadistic level.
Yeah.
And I don't like any of that because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So I don't really know of a really good depiction of it. I would say that. I don't think there could be a good depiction of it without a lot of time. Yeah.
I think there was an episode of Supernatural that also had Felicia Day in it, if I remember correctly.
That makes sense.
That was pretty decent.
Okay.
But I don't know that I ever saw it, even, so...
Yeah, so I would say at this point in time, I really haven't seen anything. On the other hand, if you are in our Discord and there is something that I have missed that I need to be watching,
by all means,
post it up there
us.
so we can definitely look into it. Next week, we're going to be talking about in-game rewards.
Yeah.
Balancing loot, alternative rewards, things like that.
And what to do in that dreaded situation when you give something that is too powerful for your campaign.
Yeah, because we've always done that at some point in our game, and it just ends up getting us so wrong.
Oh my god. And then, like, your next 3 encounters, you're just like, how do I even deal with this guy?
True. Well, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at ST_Conclave, on MixLR if you're listening live tonight, or on every Wednesday night at 7 at mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. Please check our Twitter to be able to join our Discord. We love having people join our Discord. You can find that on our Twitter link or on our website at storytellerconclave.com.
We want to give a big shout out to our Patreon members, Knox in the Box for suggesting this show topic, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, and Sparkle Motion. Thank you so much for supporting us. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find them at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find them at geefrogmusic.weebly.com. And our outro music, which you're hearing now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find her at soundcloud.com/midairmachine/tracks.
We'd like to thank our families, Vicky, Sean. Thank you so much for helping us with all this. All of our friends who've sat at our table and helped us through gaming, as well as the YouTubes that we end up having to watch to catch up on things. And you, our listeners, we love all of you.
We love you.
Good night.
Good night.